to the gone years and the now years and the maybe years, washing, ironing, cooking, scrubbing, sewing, mending, hoeing, plowing, digging, planting, pruning, patching, dragging along, never gaining, never reaping, never knowing, and never understanding. For my playmates in the clay and dust and sand of Alabama, backyards playing, baptizing and preaching and doctor and jail and soldier and school and mama and cooking and playhouse and concert and store and hair and Miss Chumby and company. For the cramped, bewildered years we went to school to learn, to know the reasons why and the answers to and the people who and the places where and the days when. In memory of the bitter hours when we discovered we were black and poor and small and different and nobody cared and nobody wondered and nobody understood. For the boys and girls who grew in spite of these things, to be man and woman, to laugh and dance and sing and play and religion and success, to marry their playmates and bear children and then die of consumption and anemia and lynching. For my people thronging 47th Street in Chicago and Lenox Avenue in New York and Rampart Street in New Orleans, lost, disinherited, dispossessed, and happy people filling the cabarets and taverns and other people's pockets and needing bread and shoes and milk and land and money and something all our own. For my people walking blindly, spreading joy, losing time, being lazy, sleeping when hungry, shouting when burdened, drinking when hopeless, tied and shackled and tangled among ourselves, you can flip the page, by unseen creatures who tower over us omnisciently and laugh. For my people blundering and groping and floundering in the dark of churches and schools and clubs and societies, associations and councils and committees and conventions, distressed and disturbed and deceived and devoured by money-hungry, glory-craving leeches, preyed on by facile force of state and fad and novelty, by false prophet and holy believer. For my people standing, staring, trying to fashion a better way from confusion, from hypocrisy and misunderstanding, trying to fashion a world that will hold all the people, all the faces, all the Adams and Eves and their countless generations. Let a new earth rise. Let another world be born. Let a bloody peace be written in the sky. Let a second generation full of courage issue forth. Let a people loving freedom come to growth. Let a beauty full of healing and a strength of final clenching be the pulsing in our spirits and our blood. Let the martial songs be written. Let the dirges disappear. Let a race of men now rise and take control. All right, let that soak in for a minute. Let that just soak in for a minute. Okay. We're going to read it through a second time. And as we read it this time, I would like for you to please highlight and underline for two things. I want you to highlight and underline for descriptive language that you hear in the stanzas. And then I want you to use a second color to highlight and underline evidence of who the author's people are. Okay? We're going to use one color to highlight and underline for descriptive language, and we're going to use a second color to highlight and underline evidence of who the author's people are. If you don't have, some of you have already started, and that's fine. If you don't have two colors, go ahead and get up and grab some now. There's color pencils in the back. You can also use highlighters or ink pens. Okay, take about 10 more seconds to gather the materials that you need, and then we'll get started on the second part of reading this through. Five seconds.
No, it's gonna be fun.
All right. I think that what we'll do this time as we read it through is have some students who would like to volunteer and read. Is there anybody who would like to cover maybe the first four stanzas for us? Tim, you want to do it? Alright, Tim is gonna read the first 4 stanzas. Now, Tim, that gives you a pretty big job because you're gonna have to read and try to mark up as you go. But if you need to go back at the end and do it, that's okay too. But for everybody else, as Tim is reading, I want you to be marking up your poem for 2 things. I want you to be marking up in one color for descriptive language and marking in the second color for evidence of who the author's people are. Alright? Okay, Tim, get started for us as loud and proud as you can, please.
For my people everywhere, singing their slave songs repeatedly, their dirges and their ditties and their blues and jubilees, praying their prayers nightly to an unknown God, bending their knees humbly to an unseen power. For my people lending their strength to the years, to the gone years and the now years and the maybe years, washing iron, cooking, scrubbing, sewing, mending, hoeing, plowing, digging, planting, pruning, patching, dragging, along never gaining, never reaping, never knowing, and never understanding. For my playmates in the clay and dust and sand of Alabama backyards, playing, baptizing and preaching, and doctor, and jail, and soldier, and school, and mama, and cooking, and playhouse, and concert, and store, and hair, and Miss Toomby and company. For the cramped, bewildered years we went to school to learn to know the reasons why and the answers to, and the people who, and the places where, and the days when, in memory of the bitter hours when we discovered we were black and poor and small and different and nobody cared, and nobody wondered and nobody understood.
Wow, that was really good reading, Tim. Wasn't that good, you guys? Is there somebody else who would like to finish out reading the poem? All right, Gabe, go ahead. Pick us up where it says for the boys and girls.
Okay.
For the boys and girls who grew in spite of these things to be man and woman, to laugh and dance and sing and play in religions and success, to marry their playmates and bear children and then die of consumption and anemia and lynching. For my people, thronging in 47th Street in Chicago and Lenox Avenue in New York and Rampart Street in New Orleans, lost and disinherited and dispossessed, and happy people filling the cabarets and taverns of other people's pockets and needing bread and shoes and milk and land and money and something all our own. For my people walking blindly, spreading joy, losing time, being lazy, sleeping when hungry, shouting when burdened, drinking when helpless, tied and shackled,
Turn the page.
entangled amongst ourselves by the unseen creatures who tower over us omnisciently and laugh. For my people blundering and groping and floundering in the dark of churches and schools and clubs and societies and associations and councils and committees and conventions and distressed and disturbed and deceived, and devoured by money-hungry, glory-craving leeches, preyed on by facile forces of state and fatted novelty, by false prophets and holy believers. For my people standing, staring, trying to get a better way from confusion, from hypocrisy, from misunderstanding, trying to fashion a world that will hold all people, all the faces, all the Adam and the Eve of their countless generations. Let a new earth rise, let another world be born, let a bloody peace be written in the sky, let a second generation full of courage issue forth. Let a people loving freedom come to growth, let a beauty full of healing and strength, of final clenching be the pulsing in our spirits and our blood. Let the martial songs be written, let the dirges disappear, let a race of men now rise and take control.
Good. Okay. So if you need to go back in and read another stanza to highlight or underline something that is either descriptive language or evidence of who the narrator, the author's people are, go ahead and do that. And then I'm going to call on some people to help me out with things we can add to our list on the board. Okay, I'm going to make another list in the middle for what this poem does well. Okay, so first of all, let me hear from someone who thinks that they know who the author's people are and why. Who are the author's people, Sarah?
Well, the author is obviously talking about when people were enslaved.
Okay, yeah, so they're talking about when people were still in slavery.
So her people were
said. They were talking about when people were slaves,
Yes.
and she was describing the way, she was comparing the way
Mhm.
their slave people lived to the way other people lived.
Okay. So comparing the way her people live to the lives of how slaves live. Good. Or of others.
So she's talking about her people who sing their slave songs.
Yeah, she's talking about the types of music that her people sing and listen to. What other things does the author use to help us describe her people? Go ahead, Sarah.
Their diggers and their ditties.
Uh-huh.
Their blues.
Good, so
and
more
their
types of
jump
music,
bars.
blues and ditties and dirges.
And then praying their prayers at night to an unknown God.
Yeah, she uses lots of descriptions of religious practices.
Bending their knees humbly to an unseen power.
Okay, great, Sarah. So let me hear from this side of the room. Did you guys find any descriptive language in the poem, Aaron or Mackenzie, that helps you understand who this author's people are? Or examples that she might write in the poem? Yeah, in the whole poem. Any stanza, it doesn't matter.
It says boys and girls who were doing slight of these things.
Yes. I love that line where she talks about the boys and girls who grew in spite of these things. Because right before that, she listed kind of a bunch of like negative stuff, right? She talks about all the years in school, which is kind of funny because you guys were kind of complaining about like different things about school this morning. And so this stanza really reminded me. She says all the cramped, bewildered years that they went to school, and then some of the things that they learned as they were in school that they found problematic, right? But the next stanza, she says the boys and girls grew and they overcame those challenges. So I really like that one. Sarah?
I think this whole poem is descriptive,
Uh-huh.
because she uses like descriptive, I'm pretty sure like every line is
Ooh.
of everything in descriptive language, because she describes everything that happened.
Yeah.
She describes the songs that they sang, and then she describes for my people lending their strength to the
Good.
years, to the gone years, to the now years, and the maybe years.
Very good.
Washing, ironing, cooking,
Yeah.
scrubbing.
Sarah hit the nail on the head, you guys. This whole poem is full of descriptions, right? So I can go ahead and tell you that the author who wrote this poem is an African American woman, and she writes the poem to describe different things that she remembers from childhood, like the games they played, being in school, the different activities they did. But she also talks about things that she sees as being a problem for her people as a whole. Remember, we talked last week about how when we read poetry, we are trying to understand the author's perspective, right? So we're trying to learn from their experience, because no one has the same experience as you, and you don't have the same experience as someone else. So we read it and we learn how they feel about different things in society and things in the world, so that we can gain an understanding of what that author is trying to say. And just like Sarah said, this author uses the whole poem to describe who her people are, what some of the challenges are that her people have to overcome, and then at the very end she kind of gives this message of hope, where she wants to see basically where her people are going to go next. So good, very good. You guys, what I have in the packet for you are a couple of other poems that we're going to read. Now, this poem is really cool because it uses a lot of repetition, right? What does every stanza start with? What words does every stanza start with?
Four.
Yeah, the title, For My People. Almost every stanza starts with For My People.
For my people, for my playmates, for the cramped, for the boys.
Yes.
and girls.
Yes, every line starts with basically her addressing her people, okay? So it uses a lot of repetition, and the stanzas have a really good rhythm as well, because she doesn't use a lot of punctuation in her stanzas, So when Timothy and Gabriel and I were reading the poem, it kind of almost sounded like it was a run-on sentence because of all the different activities she listed. If you look at the third to last poem on the back, or stanza on the back, she says, for my people, blundering and groping and floundering in the dark of churches and schools and clubs and societies, associations and councils and committees and conventions, distressed and disturbed and deceived. So the rhythm of it is really cool because she just lists things over and over and over to really send the message across, okay? I want you to keep this poem, this exemplar in mind as you read the other examples today, because the other examples I have for you today are not written by students. They are written by other published authors, so they're not going to sound the same as this first poem, but the other examples that you're about to read still go with this topic or this subject matter of for my people. All of the authors that we're going to read today have different backgrounds and different experiences in life, but they've all written these poems to kind of describe who their people are and some of them how that has impacted them, okay? So your next set of poems are numbered. I think we're going to just work with the people at our table today. So Aaron and Mackenzie and Sarah and Gabe and Timothy. What I would like for you to do is to read the poems that I will assign you. And then I want you guys, kind of like we did on the board, to discuss the contents of that poem. On the very back of your packet, turn to the very back right quick. On the very back, you will see a graphic organizer to fill in that will help you as you discuss the poems, because the three boxes that you see across the top next to title and author are what I want you to cover as you discuss these poems with each other. So as long as you fill in some information for each box, then you're hitting the requirements of the assignment to show mastery of this, okay? So the poems are numbered. Let's see, Sarah's group, I would like for you guys to read poem number 2 and poem number 3, okay? And then Aaron, your group, you're going to read poem number 1 and poem number 4, and then I want everybody to read poem number 5, okay? So Aaron and Kenzie, poem 1, poem 4, and poem 5, and Sarah, Timothy, and Gabe, poem 2, 3, and 5, okay? And as we read it, we're going to fill in the graphic organizer. Questions, Timothy?
So you want us to read the poems you assigned us,
Yes.
and then answer the questions on the back?
After you read each poem, that's a great question. After you read each poem, I think you should flip to the back and go ahead and fill out the row for that poem as you discuss it, and then move on to the next poem. Okay? Other questions? Timothy?
Why do we need to master this skill?
Well, I'm really happy that you asked, because this skill actually is going to cover a lot of things that you will have later on as you enter high school English and college. Number 1, because it's helping us to be able to analyze an author's writing. But number 2, it's going to help us make connections between what these authors are talking about and our own experiences in life. Because all of this, Tim, is leading up to us writing our own poem for my people. And so you're going to use these to give you some ideas to help with that when we get to that part,
What part?
where we write our own poem and become authors ourselves and master the English language and bend it to our will.
Or we could just write books.
Well, I mean, maybe we could write
Can
a
I get a
book,
drink
Tim.
from the water fountain?
My grand idea, take the pass, Gabe. My grand idea is for us to be able to publish some of these poems either in a student journal or maybe creating our own school-wide literary journal where we could publish our poems. But that's all later, For now, let's try to get started on this, Gabe. Hurry back, because we don't have a ton of time, so hurry back. Let's try to get started. I'm gonna try to give you guys about 20 minutes, so see how far you can get in the next 20 minutes. Now, don't be alarmed. I am gonna come around with the iPad so that I can listen to some of your conversations about the poems. But just keep going as usual. Do not worry about the videoing. Just talk as you usually would
See my face.
with each other. Yes, they get to see your face. and hear your intelligent, brilliant conversation, okay? If there's no other questions, you guys, let's go ahead and get started and, try to see how many of these three we can get through within the next 20 minutes, okay?
I actually have a lot.
You want me to come talk to you specifically? Okay.
One and four.
Yes, Timothy.
My back got stuck in my leg. I need your help to get it off.
I'm gonna get Gabe to help you when he comes back.
Okay. Second, so we read the poem, but like, what does it mean?
This is just where you write which poem you're on, so you guys are starting with, I think it's at number 2. And then as you discuss it, you would just take some notes in these boxes. You guys, as you're taking notes in the graphic organizer over your discussion, I want you to focus more on the discussion than on getting the graphic organizer filled out. Because the discussion is gonna be more profitable for you than just like trying to rush through the graphic organizer. Does that make sense?
So you want us to read the poem, discuss it, and then answer the question?
As you're discussing, yeah, so you would just write down, yeah, like Sarah has it.
And,
So poem 2.
Yeah, you guys are doing great. Yeah, you guys are doing great. I'm gonna come around with the, video so that we can hear you guys
stare at my
reading
face.
and hear some of the discussion.
The